Hello, Assalamu alaikum everyone. The topic I'm going to discuss today is the national income identity, the equilibrium in the goods market, and multipliers. It's going to be a quite lengthy video because of the number of topics selected, but all of these three topics are very essential in understanding how the macroeconomic environment of any country runs. What is the impact of any decision that an individual household, that the government, or the investors make on the aggregate output or the GDP of the country? So without further ado, let's start with the national income identity first. So the aggregate planned expenditure of any economy is the sum of its consumption expenditure, the planned investments, the planned government spending, and the planned exports, minus the planned imports, which is your net exports. Exports minus imports, which is net exports. So y is equal to c plus g plus I plus nx. Over here, y represents the aggregate expenditure, and it's sum of all the consumption done by the households, all the government spending, all the investment done in the country, as well as the net exports, all the exports minus all the imports. Simultaneously, we also have the consumption function, which is C. The total consumption is the sum of your autonomous consumption C naught plus CY, which is the marginal propensity to consume, times of your disposable income Y minus T, and Y is your gross income. Now, in an economy, the sum of all the incomes or the gross incomes Y will be equal to the GDP of the economy, which will be equal to your aggregate planned expenditure. So after solving the two equations together, we should have the gross income of the entire economy of all the people living in this house, in this economy, should be equal to your aggregate expenditure. Uh, as discussed in the previous video, I'll quickly define the two terms: autonomous consumption and marginal propensity to consume. Autonomous consumption is the amount of consumption that a person must have even when they do not have any income. And marginal propensity to consume is the excess consumption or increase in consumption because of increase in income. So what we are going to do is solving the two equations simultaneously. Y is equal to C plus G plus I plus NX, and C is equal to C naught plus CY, marginal propensity to consume, times of Y minus T. Notice both the equations have Y. So in the first step, I'll take the second equation and substitute it into the first equation. So in the first equation, y is equal to c plus g plus I plus nx, I've substituted the c part. So it becomes y is equal to c naught, the autonomous consumption, plus the marginal propensity to consume, times the disposable income, plus g plus I plus nx. In the next step, open the parentheses. So cy is multiplied by y as well as cy is multiplied by the t. Collect the y terms on the same side. Take cy from the right-hand side to the left-hand side. The sign will change from positive to minus. So y minus cy is equal to the rest of the terms. Then take y common. Once you take y common, what you have is 1 minus cy times of y. And then make y the subject of the formula. So divide the whole equation by 1 minus cy. This is an important result from two perspectives. This result will first give us how to solve for the national output if we have approximates, or if we intend to see so for example, if a government thinks they know about the economy and the autonomous consumption, the marginal propensity to consume, the tax amount they're going to levy, the government spending, investments and exports, the planned parts, then this equation can help them decide help them know what will be the GDP as a result of their decisions. So to solve for the national output, I have a question over here. Given the autonomous consumption of 300, a marginal propensity to consume of 0.8, planned investment of 1500, then we have the planned government expenditures of 1200, the taxes of 1000, and net exports of 500. We have to solve this equation for Y. What will be the aggregate output in this economy? So, in such a scenario, when a government is thinking about doing these changes, it wants to know how will this thing impact my output, and that is what we are going to see. So in the first step, we know our marginal propensity to consume is, our autonomous consumption is 300. Similarly, my marginal propensity to consume is 0.8. The taxes are 1000. The investment is planned investment part is for 1500. Government spending is 1200 and net exports of 500. Now putting all these values in this formula, so my aggregate output will be 300, the autonomous consumption, minus marginal propensity to consume multiplied by the taxes, plus the government spending, plus the investments, plus the net exports. The whole thing divided by 1 minus the marginal propensity to consume. And this gives me an aggregate output of 13,500. For an economy with these parameters, the GDP is going to be close to 13,500. Okay, the next thing I'm going to discuss is the multipliers. What if I don't want to find the total aggregate output or don't want to see the total effects? I just want to see how will the output change because I change one of the variables. If the government decides that is going to increase the taxes, how will that increase in taxes affect your GDP? So it's a one variable analysis. In a one variable analysis, a better measure, a more suited measure is the multipliers. So to see this, let's start with the multiplier effect. How does multiplier work? So the effect, multipliers look at the effect of increase of one variable on another. So the change in y to the change in x, which is the slope of the line y is equal to mx plus c, is equal to dy by dx. And let's say this is equal to m. Then multiplying both sides by dx, I can get dy is equal to m dx. So what this means is if x increases by 1 unit, which is that the change in dx is 1, then the change in y is m units, m times dx, or m times 1, which is m units. So what we are seeing is if we see an increase in x and we want to see the effect on y, we only have to multiply the multiplier with the changed amount. So what if x increased by 500 units? So dx is 500, then y will change by 500 times m. And taking the same example, but with a decrease, if x decreased this by 1 unit, then the change of m units is actually minus m, minus 1 times m is minus m. The minus sign indicates that the y decreased because of the change in x. So if x decreases by 500 units, which means dx is minus 500, then the change in y is of minus 500 m units. So minus 500 m, which is dx multiplied by m of whatever the value. So let's put it in terms of our national economy. Look at this equation, the consumption. I want to see how consumption, increasing the consumption affects your output, y, or how increasing the output increase my consumption. So to look at this, first consider the consumption function. C is equal to C naught plus Cy, y minus t. If I take the first derivative with regards to y, then I have dc, which is over dy, is equal to cy, the MPC. The first derivative, while taking the first derivative, we because y has a power of 1, we only look at the coefficient of y, which is cy. So what this says is if my income increases by 1 unit, my consumption increases by cy units, or the MPC, which is precisely the definition of MPC. Now, if I take the inverse of this, what I have is dy over dc is 1 over cy, or 1 over MPC. So what I'm saying is, if my consumption increases by 1 unit, what is the impact on the income of the household? Or what type of income change will lead to a consumption change of 1 unit? So to find that, we will take 1 over MPC. I have an example over here. Let's do this example. Assume that the MPC of a household is 0.8. So we know the MPC is 0.8. Similarly, we know then the consumption increased by 50,000. If the consumption is increases by 50,000, that means a positive DC of 50,000. We know dy by dc is 1 over MPC. So all I have to do is 1 divided by my MPC value will give me a multiplier of 1.25. This means the consumption multiplier actually means if $1 income consumption is increased, this is because the aggregate income of the household increased by $1.25. And thus, in a situation where our consumption increases by 50,000 and my multiplier is 1.25, the change in my income was 62,500. So this is the benefit of studying multipliers. You can see the impact of one variable increase or decrease on the entire output. Similarly, we can look at the other multipliers. So we found the equilibrium of the goods markets to be at y is equal to c naught minus cy t plus c g plus I plus nx, the whole thing divided by 1 minus cy. Rewrite this equation as a sum of fractions. So divide each number by 1 minus cy individually. So I can say y is equal to c naught over 1 minus cy minus cy times taxes divided by 1 minus cy plus G, the government spending divided by 1 minus CY, plus the investment divided by 1 minus CY, plus net exports divided by 1 minus CY. So from the equation, take the first derivatives to find the multipliers. Since the power of C naught, the power of T, the power of G, the power of I, and power of NX is 1, the coefficients attached to these numbers will be the multipliers. So the autonomous consumption multiplier, this is your autonomous consumption. Notice the power of autonomous consumption is 1 and the coefficient is 1 over 1 minus CY. So the autonomous consumption multiplier is simply 1 over 1 minus CY. CY is your marginal propensity to consume. 1 minus marginal propensity to consume is the marginal propensity to save, MPS. So this reduces to 1 over MPS. Then consider the tax multiplier, the second term of the equation. Don't forget the minus sign in the second term. So the tax multiplier is minus CY divided by 1 minus CY, which is minus MPC to MPS. So over here, what you can see is that your consumption multiplier, so tax multiplier is minus MPC divided by the MPS. It's a fraction of how much you will consume to how much you will save. The government spending multiplier has a positive sign, and it is 1 over 1 minus CY, which is 1 over MPS. Similarly, the investment multiplier has a positive sign and is 1 over 1 minus CY. So again, 1 over MPS. And the net exports multiplier, again, 1 over 1 minus CY. Now, net exports is actually equal to the exports minus imports. So you can think about, if I want to find the change in net exports divided by the change in exports, this is equal to 1. The change in net exports divided by change in imports is 1. So if my net exports are increasing and I want to focus on only the exports, there will be the same relationship. So the exports multiplier is the same as the net exports multiplier, which is 1 over MPS. On the other hand, notice that the imports come with a minus sign. So if I want to see the impact on net exports of imports on the net exports, notice the sign is -1. If my imports increase by 1 unit, the net exports will decrease by 1 unit. Essentially, the import multiplier will have a minus sign. So notice over here that the import multiplier is -1 over MPS. Having said that and done that, let's do a question. The government spending multiplier. Assume the MPC of an average household is 0.8. Then if the government spending increased by 50,000, this increase in government spending will result in the increase of national output by. We know that the government spending multiplier is given by 1 minus 1 over 1 minus the MPC, which is 5. This indicates that a $1 increase in the government spending will lead to the aggregate output increasing by $5. And your output will increase. The whole output of the economy will increase by 5 times of 50,000, which is $250,000. So when the government increases the money, people get the money, they spend more money, and thus the output increased by a multiple of 5. However, this increase in government spending has to be financed by some increase in taxes. So let's look at the reverse part. How will government get this 50,000? If they do not want to have a deficit budget, how will they finance it? So when the government increase their tax revenue by 50,000 and the MPC of the same household is 0.8, now the tax multiplier is given as minus MPC divided by 1 minus the MPC, which is minus 4. What this minus 4 represents is that if the tax revenue increased by $1, then the national output aggregate income or GDP will decrease by $4. Thus, a 50,000 increase in taxation will result in a drop of $20,000 of revenue or income, GDP. This is why when you have a balanced budget multiplier, you have the same amount of government spending and balanced budget multiplier implies that your government spending is equal to your taxes. When both these things are equal, the change in output because of this change, balanced budget, G is only 1. The change in output because of this balanced budget is only 1. And this is a very surprising outcome because if the government keeps a balanced budget, all the increases in government spending are financed by taxpayer money, then the economy just increases by the amount that the government is using and not by multiple times, unlike consumption, unlike investments, even unlike exports. So if in such a scenario, the government does not get involved, do not increase taxes, Do not increase the government spending and let the people consume their own tax money. Your GDP will increase by multiple times, which is more interesting that it points out that the government is redundant because just because it's government revenues, government expenditures, when they are balancing the budget, do not have as much of an impact if the people themselves spend that money, which argues that if the people can provide basic facilities and do the bare minimum to assist everyone in the economy through roads, hospitals, police, etc., policing, not the police, then you do not need a government. So, to provide national amenities, to provide the bare basics, yes, you need an increase in taxation to finance your government budget, but the government should not get involved in everything, because even if they spend the money, they're losing a lot of that money because of the increase in taxes. Thank you for watching. Please like and subscribe. And if you have any questions, put them in the comments and I'll answer them.